All right, so how many of you want your life to be a little bit easier? Right? I don't even have to ask you to raise your hands. Well, up next, hopefully, Kevin Butler is going to be able to help us make our life better through automation. Give it up for Kevin Butler with Goose Digital. He's the VP of Strategy. You actually got some woo-woos out there, so that's good, yeah.
Must have been my 12-year-old face on this picture. Okay, good morning, guys. So a little bit of housekeeping. I'll tell you a bit about who I am and where I'm from, and then we can get right into things. So first of all, I'm going to try to make this quick. There may be time at the end for questions, and if not, that's okay. I do not want to get between you, Emily, the next session, and lunch, which is probably the most important thing right now. So I'm Kevin Butler. I'm from Goose Digital, and we are a digital marketing agency based out of Toronto. We also have offices in Vancouver and Edmonton as well. Our expertise is marketing automation specifically, and we do specialize in helping develop strategies to use these tools more effectively so that the users, like all these people in this room, can get a lot more value from the tools. We have a lot of experience in underpinning the technology with digital marketing services just to bring more value to the tools. We have a lot of roots in established orgs helping transform either legacy or dated processes or ways of doing business into the modern world. And lastly, we are in the expo hall just outside here at booth 8, so awesome. Just one last thing about Goose Digital. This is a few of our customers, just to give you an idea of, to give you an idea of the kinds of organizations that we work with, as well as the industries that we have expertise with. Okay, so before we get started, I just want to get a sense, are most of the people in this room marketers by trade? Can I get a raise of hands for if you're a marketer? All right, cool. Well, digital marketing conference, no surprises there. So I don't think anyone would be surprised to know or would disagree with the notion that the role of marketing is changing, and the change that's happening is happening at quite an accelerated pace, and that's only going to get faster. And to me, when I look at it, this is really how I think marketing's changed. It's gone from being a broad, wide lens to a really broader scope with more focus. And so in the past, marketing may have been focused on that top of funnel or developing awareness and basic engagement with audiences and prospects. And I think now it's changed in the last 10, 15 years to being about owning the full journey from end to end. So more than ever, marketers now are owning more of the sales cycle than ever before. They're owning the actual in-life customer experience once the customer turns into a customer. And then they're even blending some of those functions in with IT in terms of managing technologies to support a lot of this. I would say this, I don't know if there's any salespeople in the room, but I would say marketing owns a lot more of the sales cycle than ever before, but that doesn't diminish the role that sales plays in it. Like the previous session stated, if marketing and sales are working together really, really well, then it's a pretty seamless process and everyone's working well together. Okay, so if marketing as a role is changing, what does that mean for marketers like us? And I think we can all pat ourselves on the back and say we're all of these things. But to me, if I was putting out a job description today for a marketer for today and tomorrow's world, it's really got to start with someone who's strategic, someone who's curious, who really is thinking about the bigger picture. I was speaking to someone this morning, and to me, marketing, I think you've got to be the smartest person in the org, or at least certainly try to be in my case. But what I mean is, it's more than just understanding how to go and buy pens with your name on it. It's about understanding who your buyers are, where do they come from, why do they buy your product or service, and specifically what happens once they do. You have to understand how the sales cycle operates, and you have to understand why customers may not be happy. And I think if you do have a good understanding of all these things, as well as the industry that you play in, the competitors, the partners, and everything else, then I think you're able to make a lot more informed decisions. So to me, strategic is really the operating notion here for marketers. Data-driven, I think everyone here is talking about data. There was a comment this morning in the opening keynote. Someone mentioned they really love going through data, and I think that's amazing. I think we're in an age now where we have data. We're trying to figure out what to do with it, but it's really going to informing decisions being made, and those insights are helping power future strategies and what we're going to do with our audiences. Personalization is always a heavy topic. I've come from personalization more than 10 years ago for retailers and manufacturers, and it hasn't changed. It's really about delivering the right message to your audiences, and I think more and more it's becoming commonplace. And now the expectation is the messages you are sending to your audience are personalized. They're tailored. They actually matter to what the audience wants to hear. The final 3 points to me are the most important. I really believe now more than ever, marketing is accountable for revenue and profit. Gone are the days where you can just spend your $500,000 budget and away you go. I think you have to actually answer to what you spent, and you need to be able to prove that it was valuable in order to even have a shot of doing it again. I think obsessed with scale is an interesting one. We talk a lot with our organization, we talk a lot with our prospects, and even our customers, this idea of understanding what works and what doesn't work. And I think it's really important to understand that you have a foundation of something that works, and from there you can actually iterate that process to get better and better. So if you're not operating at a scale, then I think you should be tinkering, testing, and learning to figure out how you can get to that place. It's never a difficult conversation to go and ask for more budget once you have an idea of what works, and you can actually explain that to the bosses that be. The problem is most of us aren't at that point because we don't yet know what works and what doesn't work. And I think that's, going back to the curious and strategic point, the most critical part here in terms of scale and what that means. And lastly, I think the new breed of marketer has to have a level of technical savvy now. It's not enough to just say the IT guy owns the website. It's not enough to say, I don't really know our CRM or how it works, but I ask a guy to pull a report. I think nowadays, you have to know how the technology works. You have to know how it works within other technologies. And you've got to know essentially what's going on so that you can do some of this stuff yourself. So this is, we have a few stats and numbers from Gartner. They've had some really interesting research from last year and then coming into this year. But the average marketing budget now represents roughly 12% of organizations' revenue. And that number is set to increase for the next, 3, 4, 5 years, probably for a while, provided everyone here in this room, including myself, can continue to prove value. So if the average budgets are going up, so are the number of tools available. This is a landscape diagram done by Chief Martech. They do these every year. And the only 3 things that I know in life that are certainties are death, taxes, and this image growing. Every year, this image gets bigger and the logos get smaller, and I don't even think I can recognize any of the logos on here. So we've seen an explosion of technology. And this is really interesting to me because just 6 short years ago, this very slide had only 350 vendors represented on it. Now here we are, 2018, there's well over 7,000. The only other thing I know is I'm probably gonna have to redo this chart next year and account for probably more than 10,000 technologies available. So it's quite the explosion in what's going on. So it may not surprise you, with rising budgets for marketing and rising number of fit-for-purpose marketing tools, that 27% of these budgets are actually going towards technology. I think that's really, really interesting. But it's not all good news. Research coming into this year suggested that despite budgets increasing and marketers spending more of that on technology, that now CMOs are starting to get a bit gun shy and they're starting to have concerns about marketing's ability to actually effectively acquire and, more importantly, manage that technology. So there's definitely a bit of a pullback happening. So this is a quote from Ewan McIntyre. He's the research director at Gartner who's led a lot of this MarTech research, and it's interesting. I'll read it quickly. There's pressure from CFOs and CIOs more than ever for CMOs and their marketing teams to improve their MarTech capabilities, improve their technology chops. So it's sort of interesting. It seems like there's definitely scrutiny happening from whether it's CFOs, CIOs, in terms of where the spend is and what the value they're getting from it. So acquiring the technology for marketing isn't the issue. That's not very difficult. And certainly there's lots of it as we've seen. I think what's becoming more and more important is the role it's going to play in the overall vision here. And so one of the other things I think that's interesting is looking at this. If you think of a typical IT department, if your teams have sold in IT in the past or you're aware of the sales cycle, there's a lot more process and structure around that. There's RFPs, there's use cases, there's other sorts of ROI-driven methodologies, and it's possible that in marketing, we've been quick to adopt a lot of these technologies based on a loose vision or a rough idea of the role we want it to play because we're trying to keep up with the pace of change. But what's happening is now those decisions are coming under scrutiny. I think as a community, we're going to have to start proving some of these investments before we can go and ask for more money. All right. So I think this is really important is when you're buying these tools to go empower the marketing vision that you have, I think it's critical to have a real established foundation. And I think what's going on is a lot of marketers are trying to adapt to this change. They're trying to adapt to heavy demand from their leadership to grow and grow and grow, but sometimes that's coming at a cost of vision and strategy. And I always link it to construction. If you think about the very building we're in today, they didn't assemble one room on the 5th floor, they didn't assemble then a kitchen on the main level and go back up to a penthouse. It starts with the foundation, the basement, the concrete, the parking lot, and then the ground floor, and then the first floor, et cetera. And I think that's how we have to look at technology to power our marketing programs. So what does that really mean? What does that look like? Wouldn't surprise you to know, as a marketing automation-focused agency, that we really believe marketing automation is that keystone technology in the MarTech stack. We have some slides to represent what that looks like and how we view that, but essentially at the end of the day, this is going to power, inform, and help execute against everything else around that. And without that foundation in place, I think we're still just piecemealing it together. One of the things I think I've seen a lot too when this adoption, or sort of like less than stellar adoption for marketing technologies, is some of the use cases aren't great. And so what happens is they're being plugged in for a single program here or a one thing there, and when that program ends, doesn't work or whatever, then that technology is put aside. And so it's not viewed as a strategic technology investment, it's viewed more as just a one-off stopgap to just do this thing that we need to do this quarter and on. And I just think as we start having to explain ourselves to CIOs, CFOs, and really build our concrete program from the ground up, I think they've got to be strategic technology investments with a sound vision as to how we're going to use these to drive this profit and growth. So maybe first off, for everyone in this room, can I just get a show of hands, a nice big stretch up if you can. Is everyone here familiar with marketing automation? Yeah? Wonderful. And just as a, we'll keep the hands up for whatever, how many are using marketing automation today in their programs? We got some hands? Okay, very good. We're getting to lunch, don't worry. All right, so this is from our friends at HubSpot. It's really essentially at a high level, the automation of marketing tasks and functions. There's a real technical explanation which goes something like this. The software that exists with the goal of automating marketing actions. Many marketing departments have to automate repetitive tasks such as email, social media, and other website actions. This technology makes life and tasks easier, so easy, right? Just in case you're still not too clear, here's just a few of many functions that marketing automation brings, from the management of email marketing, landing pages, forms, those things you got to fill in to get that white paper that you only kind of wanted to read, social media, and probably the most important thing on this list is tracking and reporting. We talk to a lot of organizations about marketing automation wherever they are in that journey of using, whether they're just starting out or they've been using it for a few years. And the one thing that I always say is emails and landing pages, that's not even the half of it. The most important part to me is the tracking reporting. It's about understanding who's engaged with your organization, who's actually reading and opening and clicking on the links that you're sending, and more importantly, are they coming back to your website, and how does that power the sales team and all the other things that goes on as part of your sales cycle to actually go and drive revenue and growth. And there's a few vendors below that, in case you weren't sure of any of the leading guys. These are the big names that we see a lot of time. All right, so this is a big diagram, and I'll explain it from the bottom up. But this is why we view marketing automation as a really central, critical piece to the MarTech stack, and frankly, what's going to help power your marketing automation program, your marketing program in general. So to us, we've got in red at the bottom CRM and your sales team. I think a strong sales team is largely powered with the data stored in a CRM. We look at CRM as a system of record. It houses all the data information about your customers, your leads, your prospects, your partners, anyone that you as marketers feel you need to communicate with on a regular basis. From there, it feeds up into the marketing automation platform, which we refer to as the layer of execution. So again, all the data resides in the CRM, and it's the marketing automation's job to help you do something about that. Is there a specific segment of customers you want to go target with a specific message? Is it about driving new leads and new engagement with people that are sitting dormant in your CRM, et cetera? What we've done is listed just a few of many functions within the marketing automation platform that show you just some of the things that you can be doing on a regular basis through the power of some of these technologies. It feeds up then through websites, landing pages, and microsites. These are either in part powered by marketing automation or in some cases entirely powered by them. And then from there, we've got a block of different marketing mediums that typically would be used amongst most marketing departments and programs. And then finally at the top, I talked off the top about why strategy really plays an important role here, and I guess the whole thing is sort of overpinned, if you will, by strategy, what the purpose of all these things are and how they all work together. So, sounds good, sounds easy, right? It sounds like the last presentation sounds good. Well, there is a catch. This is research from eConsultancy from last year. Turns out 98% of marketers agree, I'm seeing a lot of heads nodding, so I think we're on the right track, agree that marketing automation is going to play a critical role in their marketing program. The bad part is only half of those marketers actually use marketing automation today. Now, the research does say another 20% or so intend to use it within the next 6 to 12 months, but I still think that's a heavy discrepancy in terms of who see the value in it and who are actually doing it. Here's the most concerning part. Of the half of marketers that are using it today, only half of them report actually getting what they would consider full value for the tool. And I think here's another issue that we're seeing with marketing automation is it's just not being used strategically enough. And these tools are powerful. As a side note, today I think we well understand and sort of respect that CRMs have either Salesforce or CRM admins within an organization. In the next 5 to 10 years, we really believe marketing automation will have the same title in a lot of large organizations. And if that marketing automation admin role doesn't exist, it's the CRM admin's role is going to really increase and suck up that scope. But I think that's really concerning. And as far as marketing automation goes, it's time to think beyond lead gen. I think that's part of the problem too, is a lot of the vendors I showed before have done a really good job promoting their brand, their solution, and what they stand for, and they usually tie it to the word inbound and build it and they will come. Buy a HubSpot license and you're going to be set with leads. Well, what would you even do with the leads if you got them? And I think we have that conversation a lot with a lot of organizations. But to me, marketing automation really does what it should do, which is it helps you communicate to your audience. And so again, it's not all about lead gen, and I think marketing, part of the job here is to engage new audiences. But what about existing customers? What about partners? What about prospects? What about your own team internally for those of you in very large organizations? And so today, this is a large build-up to talk about all the other use cases for the rest of your business outside of lead gen, because I think fundamentally most understand that marketing automation does support lead generation. All right. So we'll go through, we have 5 use cases, and we'll see how these go. So the first, in my mind, is customer service. And so a lot of these tools, you may or may not know, actually house surveys within them. And if they don't themselves have surveys, they certainly have integrations with options like SurveyMonkey or whatever. But I think it's important when you're thinking about the post-transaction or post-sale experience of your customers is understanding, are they happy with the service? Is there other information we can glean from there? There's other post-sale product support, things like warranty, registrations, other information. And basically, from a marketing perspective, I think you want to try to monitor that customer's engagement. What are they saying about you on social media? What are they saying about you? Or are they connecting to you, the emails that you're writing? And that may even flow into triggers from a sales outreach or maybe even a customer experience outreach. If they're really not happy and they're taking to Twitter to voice their concerns, I think it's time for marketing to jump in and be proactive with understanding what's going on and how can this be resolved. Number 2, customer marketing. So this is from more of a B2B perspective, but this idea that just because they've converted, maybe they are a client already, and there's upsell possibilities. There could be cross-sell, depending on the type of org you are and the types of products or services you offer, or it might even be trial conversions for a lot of the nimble tech companies who get you in on that 30, 60, 90-day loop. I think a lot of things have to happen in that trial conversion to actually pull someone over the line and get them to be a sort of full-time customer. Renewal processes are really important. I come from a sort of enterprise software background, and I think really we've used automation in the past to engage, remind people of the success they're having with the technology and also the value of the technology itself, what our org stands for, possibly stuff on our roadmap to suggest this is where we're going so that these clients can make an informed decision about actually staying with us. And I think that process can start as early as 6 to 8 months from contract renewal, depending on the type of industry you are. But that's an important step that a lot of marketers aren't doing today. And when we talk about being a revenue driver and delivering more profitable programs, some of that end-to-end customer journey really comes in here, and getting that renewal and securing that through marketing efforts. Segmentation and grouping of customers, I think this is really important too. I think your customers definitely want specific product news. If you have really large technologies, if you're a really large construction company with all sorts of different things going on or information to share, I think it's time to start thinking about segmenting your groups. And we're not talking about putting one client in one bucket and one bucket only. I think there can be all sorts of different groups, but it's about, again, tailoring that message for that audience. And that's the power of some of these tools here. As a side note, Relevant step-throughs, I think there's a really good company there called Pendo. They allow you to sort of see where people are clicking in your products, but they do an excellent job of using automation to just continually send emails to you. Once you explore one section of the tool, you get an email about exploring another, and they make it fun, this exploratory way to actually understand what each section's all about and how to use it. And I just think that's amazing. They don't really have a lot of frontline customer service, but they make up for that with emails sort of telling you in the journey of how to actually use and adopt the tool internally, which is great. Corporate news, events, office closures. So we use this a lot at Goose Digital. We're not open on Monday, and we actually have to communicate to our clients that we aren't. So we have a standard email that goes out the Friday before a long weekend, which my team, I think, is working on right now. And from there, our clients are in the know, and they expect these kinds of emails from us because we're able to actually do that pretty quickly and pretty easily. Lastly, if you have loyalty or incentive programs, they could either be in part managed and run through the automation tool. They can be integrated in some cases. But again, it's about adding value to all the other things you have going on and communicating to your, in this case, customers as they would expect to be communicated to. Partner marketing. This is one of my favorite ones because I think this is one of those things that, particularly in enterprise sales, and marketing is you really want to have that connection with your partners, but it's really hard to build, and I think there's no substitute for time and putting the effort in, but this can really help support that. So whether it's partner-specific newsletters, we actually do that with a lot of our partners. I don't know if any of our partners are here today, but our relationships, we have formal partnerships with Salesforce and with Acton, among others. We send each of those user bases different messages because, frankly, Salesforce only cares about the Salesforce updates that we have for them. So why would I send them something about another product or platform that we happen to service? The other thing that we use this really heavily for is tracking partner engagement. We actually communicate with all the sales reps of Salesforce here in Canada on a regular basis. But I actually really want to know, as the marketing leader, who's engaged, who's opening our emails, and who can I call up? We actually sent, for their end of quarter, a gift basket to their office. I knew exactly who to actually label on the to Joe because of the engagement in these emails. And it just so happens he was pretty thrilled to get a gift basket. Other things that's really important if you're actually running your own partner portal yourself will be managing things like collateral, marketing positioning, price lists, battle cards, things like that. Relatively sensitive information that you don't really feel like emailing out all the time. You can have it stored in one place. In case there's changes, you can easily change those files and the information within them. More importantly, again, you can actually monitor who's going to those, and it's a relatively closed loop. It's not just hanging out there for everyone. And then finally, for new partner onboarding programs, communicating the steps over probably a series of emails in terms of what can you expect from this program, where can you find critical information, etc. Again, it's all about just, there's a similar theme to each of these use cases, which is really just doing what you have to engage your audience, whatever that audience actually needs. Internal communication, so we got this one and one more, and then I think we'll be close to wrapping up. But internal comms is a really big one. As a quick story, my previous organization, we went through an acquisition where we went from roughly 50 people in one location to 450 in about 9 places around the world. And what was really interesting is we actually had to communicate with folks in England, folks in Silicon Valley, what we were doing and why. Like, it wasn't just enough to send out an email and saying we signed a new customer. They needed to know why. Why did we win? What did we sell them? Who are they? Believe it or not, people don't know all the Canadian retailers in England. And so that was a learning exercise for us, and we actually had to use these tools as a means to distribute that message and make it look pretty sharp with a nice, good-looking email in the process. Automatic resends for non-openers, this is a really good one too. So what we were able to do is people get busy, inboxes fill up, whatever, but if they haven't opened that email 5 business days or 7 weekdays later, resend that email. It's probably buried by now, and so we use these kinds of small functionalities as ways to keep top of mind with enabling our own large user base, in this case, the example I was just sharing. Monitoring engagement and procedural compliance. I think this is a really interesting one. If there's work safety issues or internal processes and policies that are changing, I think in some cases you actually really want to know who is opening and listening to these emails. Maybe it's an employee who's just not, it doesn't seem like they're getting over the line of really buying in, but I think you want to understand, are they actually reading the materials? Because it's a very different situation if they're reading and understanding the material versus not at all. So I think this is an area where that could be of use. Then finally, I've got last 2. If you don't have a corporate storage portal, or if you don't have like an internal intranet or anything like that, marketing automation could be a substitute for that. But the most important thing is being able to communicate with your audience, in this case, your internal organization, to share news, recent wins, and any corporate updates as need be. Last one, recruiting and onboarding. So when I say recruiting and onboarding, I'm not talking about replacing traditional HR systems. I'm talking about bolstering the process behind them. So I've broken it down into both recruiting and then onboarding. But we actually work with, we're about to work with a client. We've been having a lot of discussions about them, and they have an interesting challenge on their hands. They're in logistics, supply chain, and transportation. And when they grow and acquire new business, that means they have to bulk up their team in order to support that business. So what's really important to them is they're able to go and get 300, 400 applications on a job posting from LinkedIn or Indeed or somewhere else. They actually want to use automation to monitor the engagement of interested candidates. And furthermore, they want to actually communicate with those candidates in a multi-series email drip to actually communicate where's the office, what are the things they should do, what is even dress code, just general expectations for what they're going to go through as part of their interview process, and really giving, in this case, their customer or job applicant enough information to be able to actually properly go through the recruiting experience and deliver a good interview. On the employee onboarding side, I think most people probably recognize on their first day they have stacks of paperwork to fill out. Usually it's bank information, personal information, emergency contacts, sending numbers, and everything else in between. Maybe automation can be a way to sort of simplify that, not have people write it down on paper, but actually store it digitally, and possibly integrate into other systems that require this information. I think when I started a new job, I'm just trying to learn people's names. It's going to take me like 2 weeks before I recognize that Mike's name is actually Mike. So to me, I think an education drip, a series of emails, this is where you find the corporate portal, this is where we do this is where we do that. Important information that frankly I don't absorb on the first day because I'm just trying to figure out where's my desk, who are my colleagues, and what time is lunch. Talking a lot about lunch today, I'm pretty hungry. And the final one to me is time-triggered notifications, things like annual reviews. If you could just automate all of that in one shot, we do annual reviews every January, so please, starting January 4th through the 30th, set a series of reminders that this has to be filled out, this is the location to do it. That just makes HR's life a lot easier and possibly streamline some of the day-to-day that they have to do, and just not let them worry about that so they can go do other things that are probably way more important. Okay, so just as a quick wrap-up, I really think this is the state of marketing today. The MarTech landscape is growing quicker than ever before. There's all sorts of available tools to be used. I think it's prudent on us marketers to really figure out a strategic way to use some of these tools as part of our bigger program to drive revenue and profit and really keep up with the change going on all around us, but also looking at marketing automation from a different perspective or a different lens to say it's not just about lead generation. Some of the marketers in this room may not have any responsibilities around lead generation, but that doesn't diminish the value of the tool that marketing automation can be as far as your day-to-day deliverables. So customer service, customer marketing, partner marketing, internal communications, and recruiting and onboarding. And I really believe that marketing automation can be that critical pillar to your marketing program, your internal operations, and ultimately communicating with your audiences.